So yeah, today we're talking about AI tools in job interviews, and for this I'm going to rely heavily on the work of Hilke Schellmann, who was mentioned yesterday already. She's a journalist, originally German, but lives in the US, and for the last couple of years she's done really, I think, amazing journalistic work on kind of uncovering all of these software tools and hiring practices. And we're going to look at what she found and what other journalists found and how they've tested these tools and what they've found out. And then of course, we'll have some interactive parts as well. So some parts for discussion. And yeah, this is kind of what we'll be talking about, a quick recap. I'm going to give a brief introduction. Then we'll have some group exercise and discussions. And just as a reminder, I mean, you know, I've read these books and these studies, but some of you have like firsthand experience of all of this. So please share your experience with us and let us know. I'm really interested also to learn from what you have to say here. Okay, we'll start with a quick recap so that everybody can wake up. I know it's still very early. So we're going to start with a quick WooClap. By now you all know the drill. Please go to wooclap.com and use the code CS03. And just take a moment to think about the sessions that we had yesterday, starting with the first one, so the jobs ads session. What do you remember? What stuck most with you? And because this is going to be displayed as a word cloud, kind of try to be brief, 1-2 words. And let me know if you can't access it. Okay. Okay, a lot of people answering. See a lot of bias in there, gender bias. The machines have the same biases as humans. There's accountability mentioned here, stereotypes, social justice, discrimination, lack of transparency. So as a reminder, this is really about the first session, the job ad sessions. Of lack of accountability. Several people seem to have clicked on that. It's a bit bigger. Okay. Yeah, I think this looks really good. Maybe everybody have a look. Moving again. We have audit there, stereotypes. Okay, so that was the session on how recommender systems, if you use a recommender system to kind of spread your job ad, there really is kind of a lack of, on social media and other platforms, there is a lack of accountability and understandability. If you're an advertiser of a job ad and you really want to do a good job, you don't want to discriminate, it can still happen that you, in the end, do discriminate because of the second round of optimization that platforms do without your knowledge. And that can lead to your ad being shown, first of all, in like a skewed manner. So like it may not be fair, but also just very practically, this can mean that it's kind of not shown to the candidates that you want to have in your company. So it also has kind of practical implications. Okay, great. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the session 2. It's the same question. So take a moment to think about the case study 2. That was candidate screening. We had our great guest, Paxi, joining us and presenting her experiment. And then we looked at this lawsuit in the US where a Black man over 40 who is disabled claims that Workday discriminated against him because he was rejected like from 100 job applications that he did, which all used the Workday candidate screening technology. Yeah, so what do you remember? Which idea or concept stuck most with you? Yeah, and try to be brief again. Okay, this is displayed differently. I think we can, let's try and look at it this way. I think we can change to the word cloud as well. Maybe this is actually more easy to read. Okay, great. We have multifaceted problem. I remember we had a discussion about that. There's no transparency. Again, we have bias in a different shaped intersectional bias. Liability and ethics is something I see here. Future of hiring, no resume. That is something that Paxi brought up. Past discrimination in the data set, which can lead to discrimination in the future as well. Formatting issues. CV optimization for AI is bogus. And no one takes responsibility for the machines. Okay, I'm just going to switch the view because now things are disappearing down here. This is more colorful, but also I think like less easy to read. So different ways looking at it. You can also look at it like this. Okay. Great, thank you. So I hope it's stuck in your memory. And before we move on to the topics of today's session, I just wanted to very briefly open the floor. If there's any kind of like really burning questions that we weren't able to cover yesterday, maybe we can take like 5 minutes to discuss them now. This is kind of really something where you feel like this is a very important point to you. You didn't manage to raise it yesterday. Then please go ahead and raise it now. If not, we'll get started, but I just wanted to give you like a couple of minutes so that we can discuss anything that was left open. And thank you to the people who are turning on your camera, even though I have camera issues today. This is still supposed to be an interactive session. So ideally we would have our cameras on, and I'm sorry that I cannot open mine at the moment. Okay, I see no questions. from yesterday. So let's move on to today's topic, which is AI tools in job interviews, and the question whether they are fair and whether they work. So there's different kinds of AI tools that are being used by companies, and I'm sure you've heard of many of them. For example, there's emotion and personality assessment tools. There's word choice analysis. This can be done through video analysis or audio interviews. That means that you would kind of record yourself answering some questions, either via video or in an audio format, and send it to the company. Then there is AI games that are meant to kind of test certain skills. These are, for example, used a lot for kind of entry-level candidates that don't maybe have a lot of work experience that you can build on, but you want to see, are they risk takers? How do they react to stress? So there's kind of browser-based little games that you play that are supposed to show like these kinds of things. So, example, how much of a risk taker you are, and so on. Then there is like the automated analysis of candidates' social media profile. I'm sorry, I see there is a small mistake there. So this is also something that we touched on yesterday. I mean, it's not new that companies and employers look at candidates' social media profiles. This has happened for a long time. But what is changing in the last couple of years is that there's tools out there which you can kind of automatically use to analyze people's profiles. Like, you don't have to have an HR person surf the web and look for the candidate. You can just get this by the software, and they will do it for you. And the aim of all of these tools is kind of to save cost, make hiring more efficient, of course. And in many companies, I think it's just, this is also something that was touched on yesterday. I mean, they're just simply overwhelmed, right? I think I read somewhere that, for example, for Goldman Sachs, they get several thousand job applications just for their summer internship. So what do you do with all these resumes? How do you make a decision? How do you decide who to invite or not? There is really like no fair way to do this without technology. I mean, if you would do it without technology, you would probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, people in recruiting, but I guess you would look at the referrals, and then you would look at maybe like the first couple of CVs, and then your capacity would be up, and that's it. So there would be many CVs that nobody ever looks at. So that is kind of the problem that companies are trying to solve by using AI. The only issue is that it's kind of unclear if this actually works, right? So is it fair in the end to have these tools making the interviews, or do we still have similar problems but kind of scaled up through technology? And are we kind of hiding, like, do we have the same biased hiring world that we kind of always had, but now we're hiding behind these tools? That is kind of the hypothesis, I would say, that Hilke Schellmann puts forth in her good book, the Algorithm. Yeah, so kind of, are there any questions up to here? Okay, I don't see any right now. So moving on to actually an example. It's now 9:30, but it's a Saturday, so let's just watch a video.
We begin our exploration.
Sorry, let's just watch a video together. I'm gonna start here. This is also, yeah,
of the new world of hiring with a visit to the headquarters of one of the companies that's pushing the envelope, HireVue. Its artificial intelligence assessment tool is used by over 50 companies, including Unilever and Hilton, which both declined to comment. This, I'm told, is a typical digital interview for someone applying to become a customer service rep. It confronts me with several scenarios that on the job I might encounter.
If If you can't help me resolve this right now, I'm going to take my business elsewhere.
I'm here to try to make things better. And I go into this knowing something that HireVue acknowledges many job candidates potentially do not. That my responses are being assessed not by human beings, but by AI, analyzing my tone of voice, the clusters of words I use, and my micro expressions. So here's what's wild to me. Of micro expressions? Is that what you're calling them?
It's the facial analysis software. It's capturing, if you think of facial movement, smiling, frowning, eyebrow movement, those are actual database points, and they roll together to give certain emotions and traits and personality and thinking style things.
Here I am. I just did the interview for a job as a customer support representative. How'd I do?
The first thing is we look at the AI score that's attached to it, and you can see that up here. You scored at a 37%.
That's pretty good, right?
No, that's out of 100. Right? So you're kind of in the bottom third, if you will, in that job. So you'd be a low match, essentially. My rating is the result of HireVue's AI comparing my responses to those of actual employees. Essentially, my performance is being compared. My voice, my words, my facial expressions against a company's highest performers. So you think if an employer were to see that number, would I be written off most likely? Would it be filtered out of the process completely? No, absolutely not, actually. What we would recommend is that the candidates could be rank ordered by that, but they still go and look at the different videos.
So you're telling me that everybody who goes through this, they get seen by someone?
Can be. They want to watch all the videos.
But they might decide, hey, this guy Jason only has 37%, not even worth our time.
If you score so low, they might say we may not watch all the videos, but they may watch a question. They confer with that score and then move on.
We came here to Chicago to meet a young man just graduated from college who's not a huge fan of video interviews. Alex Wong graduated in May from the University of Illinois. He sent out more than 30 job applications before he landed this position as a junior credit analyst at a local bank on the south side of Chicago. And for how many of those 30 did you have to do video interviews?
I would say around 10 of them.
About half of them were administered on HireVue's platform. Were you not getting follow-up interviews after you did these online interviews?
To be honest, after all of them, essentially, I never really went past the first round. It didn't provide me the opportunity to actually show who I really am.
Wong believes it wasn't his education or work experience, but the video interview format that caused him not to advance. He doesn't know which companies might have applied AI analysis. The place where Wong eventually got a job does all of its interviews in person.
I'm old-fashioned, I guess. So I want to see the people. I want to ask my questions. I want to look at them in the eye.
Not to put you on the spot, but how's he doing? Let's do a little job review right now.
My 30 years of doing this, he's probably one of the top 3 or 4 or 5 kids who come through here.
How about that? Good for you.
Yeah, he's done very well.
Okay. That was the quick video interview. As I said, this is based also on the work of Hilke Schellmann, even though she's not featured here. So before we move on, just quick info. So HireVue has since stopped using this kind of sentiment analysis that we saw there. So this analysis of micro expressions, basically because they kind of did an internal analysis and found that these findings from the visual analysis were only very weakly related to job performance. So they were actually not getting results that were useful for their clients. And I think that's a good thing that they stopped doing that. But the issue is HireVue is kind of one of the biggest companies in this space, but there are a lot of smaller companies that also do similar things, and they are kind of behind the curve and like still using it. So the big ones are kind of already moving away from that, but smaller ones are still using this. And in a moment, we're going to look at actually an example from a German company. And I see here the question, is HireVue used in Europe? So this is a great question. And the answer is, like, I'm not entirely sure to what degree it's being used in Europe. I kind of tried to find this out. I asked actually Hilke herself. She, a couple of months ago, did a presentation for the FINDHR group. I asked her and didn't kind of get a really straight answer. I think she doesn't really, she's focused on the US. And then because I couldn't really find a lot of information on this, I asked a couple of weeks ago. I was kind of at an event with employers and trade unions, and I kind of tried to find out from a couple of these trade associations, and they say that in Germany, not super many companies are using these. Especially because Germany is a country with a lot of medium and small companies, so they don't have these massive HR departments, and they don't kind of use that. But it's honestly really hard to find out, and I don't know for the rest of Europe, because I know a bit more about Germany. But I also have a feeling in Germany, especially, companies are very reluctant, even if they are using this technology, to disclose it, because Germany is traditionally a quite tech skeptical country. So it wouldn't be great PR kind of to do that. So unfortunately, I don't have a really good overview of the situation in Europe. And actually, I've already kind of started, but before we move on, I would like to kind of get your reactions to this video. I see there's a couple of people who wrote something in the chat, but maybe let's first hear from some of you in the room. So Giovanna, I think you were the first to raise your hand. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Claire. I think this, I've not seen scientific studies, but I see, thank you, Robert, I mentioned one, Barrett et al. But I would be very curious to see how sound those analyses are, because also across cultures, micro expressions are, I mean, you wouldn't be able to use that to really validate what are the competencies of people. So I'm a bit surprised that this is legal. So that's surprising, scientifically, I mean.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe some of the lawyers in the room can comment on that, if it would actually be legal in all settings. Great comment. Okay, Roberta, on to you.
Hi, so I'm also a legal scholar. So, well, basically, I've seen a lot on emotion recognition, and I am really skeptical about it because, for example, Barrett, in her studies, she discredited the basic emotion theory on which emotion recognition and the analysis of microexpression is based, because it lacks really the scientific, method, and it's really bad also for people coming from different backgrounds. It depends on context, it depends on cultures. So this is really not scientifically sound, and a lot of scholars are saying that. And for the AI Act, it actually would ban emotion recognition in the workplace. I am not sure now whether it applies also to job interviews, but also the use of emotion recognition in other contexts, it's still high risk, so it should be highly regulated by the AI Act.
Okay, yeah, that's great insight into the legal situation. It looks, Lina, I think you're next.
Thank you. No, I totally agree. Also, want to kind of bridge to what Giovanna said, that exactly you cannot apply same set of standards that were kind of developed in US and then transfer them to cultures, let's say, the next adopter would be Europe. Even within Europe, we have so many differences, and as as mentioned, yeah, there is no scientific background to prove this is actually accurate. So to me, this seems like another case like where we had like in the 19th century, the study of phrenology that was discounted. This is a new thing as well. So yeah, this is, I would be most afraid if the kind of highest performers as the kind of that were shown there, and then the new applicants kind of compared to them, that if applied in Europe as just a format here, that we will kind of push people to Americanize their kind of approach to job interviews.
Yeah, I think the comparison to phrenology makes a lot of sense to me because it is kind of the same kind of pseudoscience, and companies are just kind of so desperate that they kind of use it anyway. And just a quick note, thank you everybody in the chat for kind of answering each other. Looks like you're taking care of it. We had one question about if there's any studies on sentiment analysis. Yes, and I think what you can say is it's quite thoroughly like disproven. There is agreement in the scientific community that this is not real science. Okay, I think the next is Ivor.
Yeah, Canil actually published a guide to recruitment, and it specifically mentioned this type of tool, and it made the same point as Nina did. There is no scientific evidence to back up that it works. It's pseudoscience. On top of that, there's already been challenges on the likes of Clearview in Europe where it's been banned because it doesn't work properly. I can't see a tool like HireView surviving a challenge when it comes to the EU AI Act.
So maybe we should think about doing some strategic litigation in that field, because I think these tools are still being widely used also in Europe. So maybe that would be worth something to kind of test out the AI Act and see what's happening there. Okay, I think we have 3 more people, and then I think we should maybe move on. We have more opportunities to discuss throughout. And the next one that I see here is, I don't know, like it's Sharad, or maybe you can say your own name.
Hi, my name is Sharadhi,
Okay.
and I come from an AI background. My background is in explainable and trustworthy AI. And aside from the legal perspective, I see it from a scientific perspective. And in this particular video, the candidate was Asian. And if all of us by now should be familiar with the fact that a lot of these models are trained on one data, and one racially say homogeneous data, and then they perform really badly on say when the facial features are from people of different races. And it's seen that a lot of image recognition algorithms perform badly on people of color. So aside from the legal implications, I think that the companies that use these softwares, they themselves do not know the flaws of these algorithms, and those that design the algorithms, they do not think of the societal implications that, let's say, HireView, they do not have an incentive to look at the societal implications or the ethical implications of what their algorithms can result in. So we have 2 very independent people doing something that can have a societal implication without giving much thought into it. And then it leads to this whole problem that we are in. And maybe just even talking a little bit might help with each other. This is something that I think from an AI perspective, that the algorithm designers do not talk to the others, and then it leads to like how he said that he had 30 interviews and he was not hired, and then one in-person interview and he got hired. That's my 2 cents.
Yes, great. Thank you. I think one very important point is definitely that software companies don't have an incentive at the moment to think about the societal implications of their programs, what you just said. I think that is a very important point, and we should somehow think about how we can put these incentives in place. Yesterday, we looked at the Workday lawsuit where the software company are arguing that they shouldn't have to take on this responsibility, and there is some like it is understandable why they argue that way, but we need to find out how to do this, right? Okay, Yannick.
Yeah, I found the example quite interesting. In German, there had been another case. I hope I'm not spoiling anything you had prepared for us. It's about a company that did also video analysis, and the interesting part was first, the scientific background wasn't that well proven, and the system actually filmed and interpreted not only the facial recognition, but also what was in the background, how well the scene was lit, and such things from an aesthetics perspective that did not well assess candidates' quality as well.
Yes, I think we may actually be coming to that.
Oh, sorry.
No, all good. This is good. But if it's not the same example you'll see, then please share your example. Okay. Then here's another name where I'm not sure how to pronounce this. I'm very sorry.
It's fine. It's Asama.
Asama. Okay, great. Thank you.
No worries. So I was thinking that this kind of system do have a big hole, which is in case of someone, suppose like they made the example of someone in the customer service position, but suppose there is someone who wants to apply into an IT position and does not necessarily, is not required to have social skills, communication skills, presentation skills. And suppose someone with a disability, such as speed impediment or some other kind of disability that affects the way they talk and they present themselves, is rated by this kind of system. Like in that case, would they be liable to, basically, would they be discriminated even indirectly in this case? And why? I think that this system did not consider this kind of option as well, because we cannot say this kind of system works well on normal people, let's say able people and not disabled. So this difference, it kind of threw me off on the how well this kind of systems work.
Yeah, and that's a very important addition. So the bias is not only like a racial bias that Sharadi already mentioned, but also like people with disabilities are definitely affected. And I mean, HireVue stopped using this sentiment analysis, even though other companies are using it, exactly because in many cases there was no link between job performance and the sentiment analysis they were testing. So as you say, there are many jobs where you don't have to be like a smiley extroverted person to perform well in your job, right? So what are we even testing here? Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. Let's move on. And if you have any more points, I kind of try to monitor but the chat as well, but it is a bit hard to kind of do both things. So like maybe if there's something in the chat that I don't see, please just raise your hand and let me know, and maybe voice it in the group, then we can definitely see what you want to contribute. Okay, so I don't know, Yannick, is this the example that you were talking about? Yeah, okay.
Yes, it is.
Okay, perfect. So because we always talk about like these bad US companies, but we're here in Europe, I really wanted to show you a German example. So this is also a couple of years old, but I think it's still being used in a very similar way. The German public broadcaster Bayerischer Rundfunk a couple of years ago did like a great piece on the software of a German startup called Reformio, which is from Munich, and which, according to their website, several like DAX listed companies use, even though we don't know exactly, like this is not public, how many companies actually use it, and also kind of if it's changed a little bit since then. But basically, they have like a very similar video type analysis like HireVue, and the Bayerischer Rundfunk, they hired actors in their experiment to answer these video interviews. And the images that you see here, I also actually think that Chato in his very first lecture mentioned this briefly. So maybe this is like a repetition from there. Yeah, so they had actors, and they asked them to kind of go through this process. So the images that we see here are from a video where the person was asked, please introduce yourself. And she's an actor, and she introduced herself, and she first kind of did it without any glasses or headscarf or any kind of accessories. And then they tried like different variations. So in the first one, she put on glasses, and then she put on a headscarf. And they use these this so-called ocean model of personality traits, which again, I think is quite discredited. So according to this model, the person's personality can be assessed in 5 dimensions: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeability, and neuroticism. They kind of did several tests with this throughout. And their first conclusion was that the AI apparently responds different to outfits with like considerable results. So here you can kind of in the graph below, you can kind of see that, for example, when she was wearing glasses, the AI thought that she was a lot less conscientious. And when she was wearing a headscarf, she was a lot less neurotic, apparently. So it's very unclear how this is kind of like what the basis for this is. Yeah, it's clear that, I mean, I think we can all agree that outfits shouldn't make this big of a difference in the analysis. And kind of on the methodology, I'm just going to read out this quote. It's from Vittorio in response to the journalist. According to Vittorio, however, the impression that a person makes on other people is part of the concept. The startup confirms on request. The algorithm is trained to measure the impression of people. So how people judge someone's personality from observation. So this means they're kind of not even trying to be, they're trying to imitate people, assessing interviewees. They're not trying to come up with a technology that is kind of less discriminatory, or discriminates less. So they're just kind of saying, okay, how would people assess this? Let's make a software that does the same as the people do, basically. And their method was that they used, so the AI was trained using videos of more than 1,200 people of different ages, gender, and ethnic backgrounds. And an additional 2,500 people rated how they perceive them in terms of these personality dimensions that I mentioned before. And according to the startup's AI assessment, they have like an accuracy of 90% compared to this group of human observers. So that is their method. And I would be very curious to know like where you see flaws in this method, because I do see a couple. And just to finish up, Yannick already mentioned this. The background apparently makes a big difference. So if you just have a blank background, the person here was rated as less open, less extroverted, and less conscious as with like a picture in the background. And they've had similar findings if you had like books in the background. Like books were great, apparently. Means you're going to be very good at your job if you have books in the background. And a fundamental, I mean, I think we've already touched on this, face recognition like with machine learning, several people have mentioned it, but the problem is that, I mean, these are not intelligent systems in the end. These are pattern recognizing systems. And so they recognize patterns and they don't understand the patterns, right? So we don't know what they're responding to, the machine learning technology. We don't know, are they actually responding to the person's expression, to like the person, or are they actually responding to something that's completely insignificant, like the background? It's very hard to tell, even though you could probably kind of try to find out a bit better than they did here, but in the end, this is definitely not made transparent. And then we have here lighting. Lighting also makes a big difference. So again, this person is rated very differently. So they kind of artificially made the one picture, like the video, darker and resubmitted it. And the darker image was, she was rated as less conscientious, less extroverted, but and more neurotic. So not a great result. Yes. Yeah, this is kind of just to show you that this is not only happening in the US, this is also happening in Germany, and especially kind of in this moment where Europe is kind of trying to scramble and reach the US in the AI race. I wonder if we're going to see more of this kind of, I would say, snake oil technology. Okay. I'm gonna check. Yeah, okay, I see one hand was raised. Please go ahead.
Yes. So again, I mean, what's the science behind this? You know, like clearly machine learning produce patterns, detects patterns and associations. It doesn't mean those associations are true. There's no causal inference. They don't do hypothesis testing. It's just, for me, it's just nonsense that these systems are being deployed in the real world when actually this has not been really tested. And also, my background is epidemiology. When we have to do a study, we have to go through ethics review, and we have to prove that we do no harm. And so it's just unbelievable that this software companies can just deploy these systems in the wild without really proving this is not causing harm. So just a comment.
Yes, that's a great point, and that's actually also a point that from the book, The Algorithm, that Hilke Schellmann makes, that the first rule, as always, should be do no harm, and it is very unclear in these cases if that is the case. Okay, I see 3 more hands raised, and then I think we'll move on again. Frida.
Yeah, so I see like quite a few problems with this sentiment analysis and these technologies, like from the data perspective, like analysis of my background. This is actually something even participant would not even consent. And this is something like really not an essential data for the purpose of like hiring. And this really like contributes like with the type of like data that you collect and the purposes that you collect. Actually, according to GDPR, it must be like really essential data that that is not going beyond what is strictly necessary for hiring. And analysis of background is definitely something out of scope. So this is, I see like a very like really red line from this perspective. And also like, as everyone like said before, like reliability of data and like analysis of face is still like experimental. So we are not really sure about like how accurate it is. So data accuracy and reliability, like from the GDPR standpoint, is really here. I see gross violations from that perspective. Because if you take the data, when you select someone, the data must be really accurate, not abstract. But here, like background or me wearing headscarf or glasses, like this is totally like pseudoscience, as someone said before. So yeah, very few problems. I can list even more, but it's just very broad.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think you also see who's next, right? You can just go ahead. It's Roberto now.
Hi, but sometimes I believe it's not even a thing of like bias in this case. It's more like a malfunctioning, because it's not like it's seeing that I wear glasses, so it assumes that I don't see well. It's probably just because the sensor don't perform well with people with glasses, so it doesn't see well my eyes, and it cannot assess my vision, for example, my expressions so well, because I have something on my face. So sometimes it's not even a hidden bias or even head scars. Probably it's just something relating to how the head moves and how the face is covered. So it's something even relating to non-performing well with sensors in this case.
Yeah, definitely. I think the question, does this even work, is something that we should definitely ask. Okay, then I have here Teresa, and then after that Nina, and then I think okay.
Yeah, I'll be very brief, just to say, well, I do believe that these kind of technologies, first of all, scientifically doubtful, and absolutely inconsistent with human rights, goes to the core of human dignity, because it creates a system of classification that is terribly arbitrary. So it goes against all patterns of human rights, at least. If you think about, for example, neurodiverse people that also have their rights, I believe that there is a huge possibility for discrimination. So yeah, it should be challenged, and it should have been more clear in the AI Act, and I believe that it isn't, and this will be a problem in the future. Thank you.
Yes, if I could just follow up on that, maybe, like, I would love to hear your assessment. Do you think that we need additional laws around this, or do you think we just have to kind of because I mean, we're not like in a lawful space. There are laws around. Do we just have to kind of implement them, or do we need actually new laws?
Clara, there you have an extra problem. That is, it is dependent on how the states are going to implement this regulation. And this is a problem, because the systems per se, of course, we all have laws and we all have mechanisms to redress and to challenge. Nevertheless, the least clearer they are, probably you have a higher deficit of rights and awareness and participation in people challenging this. So, well, it's still too early to say if we need more laws. Sometimes more laws just adds more chaos to an already very complex architecture of human rights protection. So we will have to stand by and see how this goes. I also believe very much in the frame of business and human rights. So companies being more and more aware of the risks, reputational and legal risks. So kind of investing, as you do actually in Algorithm Watch, in this kind of awareness that will in a way give more, it will strengthen the rights that already exist, but it will all depend very much on participation, at least in Portugal. And I often write small articles on this. I do not believe that people are already aware of the risks that they face. So there is a huge path that you still have to undergo in order to, in the end, have a conclusion if you need more rights, if you need more laws or not. Sorry if I cannot help with this.
No, that's very, very helpful. I mean, the reason why I ask, and this is a bit of a tangent, but is that we're currently, I mean, with the new EU Parliament in place, we're kind of trying to find out what the plans are and so on. And at the moment, it doesn't really look like this is going to be a priority for the upcoming legislative period, and we of course think it should be, and that we need some more laws around this kind of thing, or at least need to like help countries implement this in a harmonized way. So yes, thank you for letting me ask that question. Okay, I said I was going to stop, but I think this is actually a good discussion. So maybe we'll just keep these three people who are now raising their hand, and then we actually only have like one small exercise after that. So please go ahead. I think the next one is Giovanna. Yes. Oh, I think Giovanna, you're still muted.
Apologies. No, just to say, if the company used in their training data set a demography like of only, let's say, only white people, and then you have a candidate that is not white, then the algorithm has not been trained on this type of image. Then when they say, oh, it's 90% accuracy, is a bit meaningless, because first of all, it's not transparent how they did it, and if we don't know what the data set for the training looks like, and that this is used on a different type of population, the accuracy is not going to be good, because it's in the training data set you don't have those type of images. So I just want to say that overall accuracy is not a good measure, and they actually need to do look at intersectional groups with ethnicity, age, different types, to really say, okay, we have looked and we can see that in different groups, for each group the accuracy is this, but overall accuracy is meaningless actually. Thank you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, Sharadi, you're next.
Yeah, I will give a very different perspective on this, aside from the legality and ethics. Most companies, I believe, want our authentic selves to be put forward when we when we perform the role. And when we give in-person interviews, there is so much that the interviewer can evaluate us based on how we respond and our small mannerisms. This is a very, let me say, a fixed layout on how to do things. It doesn't give room for spontaneity and the small little things that can actually add a lot when we are on the job, which the interviewer can probably very soon evaluate and the system cannot evaluate. And so, and also putting my AI hat on, for some, it is for somebody who understands how algorithms work. It will, and for somebody who's all, let's assume this, they take all the time, read all the available literature, and go into individual platforms, learn how they function. It should not be very difficult to scheme and understand how to put their best selves forward for the platform. In that way, it's a lose-lose situation, even for the company that's employing this. You have somebody who's just programmed himself or herself to perform well from the perspective of an algorithm, and you just don't know how they fit well into your company. So in the long run, it might not be good for the company as well, even though it reduces their initial overhead.
Yes, I think that's a very important point, and we should kind of, I mean, companies should not have this kind of short-term thinking, right? Just throwing AI at the problem instead of actually thinking deeply about what they need and so on. And I wonder why, when I was talking to the if that's why when I was talking to the employer associations here in Germany, these medium-sized enterprises, where they kind of not choosing to do this right now. This could be one of the reasons. I hope it is. Okay, thank you. Nina.
Thank you. I just kind of want to come back very shortly to the background on the video. I mean, all the interviews, especially first and second level, I was always via video when I applied for jobs. And if the background is something to be considered, it's very much, to me, so many things that whether it's lighting or what is on my background, some sort of like indirect discrimination that kind of can be compared to social scoring, because not everyone knows or can have that kind of advantageous background for the interview. So it's I think that's something that should be completely disregarded if when counting points on candidates on interview. But how can you kind of like put extra points to someone who has books behind them or has better lighting? It's absolute. So it's, this is and this doesn't come to one of the protected categories. It's not really direct discrimination, but it's very sneaky.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is like, it could be considered as a proxy. Do you know how to present as a middle class academic?
Exactly.
So this is kind of what the system what it may be testing for. We don't know what it's testing for, right? But that could be one hypothesis. Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, right. So now I actually forgot about this poll. We've been discussing all of this kind of here, but maybe if there's something that you've forgotten which you haven't brought up, here's another poll question. Why is sentiment analysis problematic in our view? I think we've discussed this quite a lot, but you can put it down here. Then we have something that we can save, and also kind of, we can remember our points better if we write them down once. And I think I'm going to change to the list format for this, because people are writing longer things, which I think makes sense. So I think it's easier to read, maybe. Yeah, so basically many of the things we've already mentioned. It's reductive, there's no scientific base. It does not factor in nuances, it's not objective. Is it even the right purpose? The purpose is problematic. Just going to scroll a little bit. It's inconsistent with human rights. That's a very important point. It's overly intrusive and inaccurate. Cultural and ethnic differences are discounted. Is sentiment even relevant? There's no basis for it. Yes. Okay. Yeah, I think we've collected a lot of reasons why we shouldn't use this kind of technology. And I hope that we can kind of together maybe strengthen this message out in the world wherever we are, that we shouldn't use this. And I just have a couple of slides left. This is just kind of a reminder. This was also mentioned, but I mean, we've known for a very, very long time that facial recognition has its problems, and it's not new. Like in Germany, we had one example of a woman where in the she wanted to get a new ID and went to the administrative office for that. And then she was kind of not recognized by the picture machine, photo automat, by the picture, the thing that takes your picture. Last week, actually, there was this human rights case in the Netherlands where a student was not allowed to join her, like she was not allowed to take a test, where they had like, this was they started during COVID, they started, you kind of had to show your face before you were let into the test, so that during a remote test, they could make sure that it was actually you taking the test. And the student, who was a Black student, was not allowed to like take her test because basically the software didn't recognize her. Like these are problems that we've known for a very long time, and somehow still they keep kind of popping up in different guises. Now we have kind of this AI hype that's been going on since kind of the release of ChatGPT. Everything has to be AI. And again, we see the same problems emerging, even though they've been kind of discounted by AI ethics people for a very long time. Kind of a quick reminder. Okay, and then just one last video, just to show that the problem is not only with audio, it's actually also, I'm sorry, not only with video, but it's also with audio. I'm going to play this.
So I wanted to know a little bit more how these tools work and how it feels to be a job applicant being asked to use these tools. So I tested them. And one of the tools I tested was marketed to companies in the West hiring call center employees in the global South. And one of the criteria was, how well do the candidates speak English? And I started first speaking English, answering the questions, and I got an 8.5 out of 9 English proficient. I was very proud because English is actually my second language. So I was like, yeah, this tool works. Please try to not take long pauses. I wanted to push the algorithm a little bit. I read a Wikipedia entry in German that had nothing to do with work. The Methode des psychologischen Messens. And I sent it out to be scored, and I thought I would get an error message back. I got an email, and it said that I scored 6 out of 9 and that my English level was proficient, which was surprising because I didn't say a word of English, that this tool could actually infer how well I speak English. I got in touch with the company and asked them for comment and speak through this, and they kind of didn't know either why I was scored this way. I kept asking, like, why was I scored 6 out of 9? And they kept explaining that German and English in a 5D AI space were close together, but they couldn't actually answer how was I scored. I talked to a couple of employment lawyers, and they shared with me that many of the resume screeners they looked at had biased variables. One tool gave folks who had the word baseball on their resume more points.
Sorry, this is already the next topic. I think we've covered this already. Yeah, so problems with video, with audio are the same. Do they even work? What is happening? I think this is just a kind of additional point here. And also, like, one point that was not mentioned in the video, but which I think is important, it's not only like this scoring your language proficiency, but also word cluster analysis, which again can be a proxy for gender and class background, because the women and men kind of use different kind of terms. Men are typically they use more bold terms when they describe themselves, and women are a bit more cautious and careful when describing themselves. And again, it has a class dimension as well. We all know that people with different class backgrounds speak differently, so this can also be something that is a proxy for people, and can lead to unintended consequences here. Oops, I'm sorry.
So I wanted to know a little bit more how these tools work.
Trying to move on to the next slide. Yeah. So I think if there, let's have a final round of questions. I have a couple of more slides, but I'm also conscious of the time. And I think we've already had a lot of discussion along the way. So let's do kind of a final round of questions and then have a bit of a break, and then we'll move on to our second session. Okay. Julie.
Yes, thank you. So something that I was wondering was
well, or maybe to go back a little bit about like the incentives and also why those software companies develop those tools and maybe don't think necessarily about those negative effects they might have. I think it might also have to do with kind of the problem they're trying to solve when selling their software. And as I think was mentioned in the chat, it was really interesting. Well, it's because the user, they probably just want to automate and improve their processes. But as long as it's not a clear, let's say, requirement to say, well, we need some tool that doesn't discriminate, that's more inclusive, there probably isn't going to be an incentive from a business point of view to do that for the software companies. And I was wondering about that because, I mean, I guess also because of all the DEI initiatives and all of that, there must be a market for this, right? I mean, aren't there software companies that are saying, well, actually, our solution is taking this into account. We're showcasing more diverse candidates, etc., because it would be a great value proposition, actually. So I was wondering from that perspective, if you had some examples or your thoughts about that.
That is a really good question, and I'd actually love to turn it over to the group because I know that some of you actually work in this field and may be more aware of these kinds of examples. If somebody is kind of using this as a value proposition to make a more diverse AI system that takes these things into account, maybe from an AI ethics perspective.
Sorry, but maybe just to specify what I mean is just from the value proposition. I mean that the softwares are offering. Is that something maybe that HR professionals, you're saying, hey, we have specifically a need and we want to implement well, this process to have less bias? Are there tools on the market that people are using and that would be kind of a positive, you know, counter example to what we've been seeing?
Yeah, I think Yannick raised his hand.
Yeah, I hope I understood your question right. At the moment, I'm doing research on the HR analytics use in basically mainly German-based enterprises, and the most common answer why AI systems are implemented is basically, and I think Wolf already said it in his answer as well, they are driven to automate, to standardize, to cut costs, to increase efficiency. Some people told me, well, we use it because it's basically there and we want to be at the forefront. We want to be avant-garde or something like that, to use the newest technology that's there. But in the end, if you dig deep enough, the main incentive, the main motivation to use AI techniques is to drive up efficiency. And so in the end, well, the reason is the market, the reason is capitalism. It's perhaps a bit oversimplified, but that's what I heard from several companies that are larger.
Yes. Andreas, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think that might be true, but still there are some tools that could be used for diversity purposes. I don't know about the video tool, but there is a tool that helps you to formulate in an inclusive way. So you can give it a text for, let's say, a job ad, and that tool will go and tell you, well, it's not inclusive, but you could change it in that way. So there might be more tools like this, I think.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. This is actually a question that I had on my list as well. Like if you think that it's possible to use video and audio analysis in a way that is inclusive and does not discriminate and is actually useful for companies. maybe you have thoughts on that. Yes, Roberta.
Yes, thank you. For now, I am very skeptical about this because sometimes you don't even know on the basis of what these systems are discriminating. They're so not transparent. It's so hard to say, okay, we have to take into account, for example, the color of the skin, the lighting, and the background, and all these elements, because, well, we know that, but maybe there are still a lot of other elements that we do not even know that they are discriminating. For example, in the view of ableism. So I believe that there are things now that actually can help, but we still have to be very, very cautious because we don't even know all these characteristics on the basis of which the system discriminates.
Yeah, very good point. Is there maybe somebody here who thinks it can be done? That we can have a video audio analysis tool that discriminates less or doesn't take these things into account? Because I mean, not for video and audio analysis, but within the FINDHR project, that is one of the goals too, in the space of like resume scanning, to develop an algorithm that doesn't discriminate as much. So I think there is people who are thinking about this. For example, Daniela. Okay, seems like we have a less optimistic crowd here in the room. No worries. Okay, before we go into a very well-deserved break, I just wanted to show this final slide. Just this reminder that in all of these, whenever we're talking about these algorithms, we have to kind of consider the entire pipeline. So from the data that is selection to the objective, which we've been talking about a lot today, which is what is my purpose in doing this actually, to the model that I choose, and then finally the application. And there's different like people and companies along this pipeline who are responsible. So it is in some cases the employer that kind of buys the software, but it's also the software developer itself. And then it's kind of the individual HR person who applies it. So I think this is always very important to keep in mind.